if we look at this slide with some historical data, house price data, this looks at an house back in 1964 which was worth £10,000. What this slide shows us is how this £10,000 house has increased over the years. Back in 1965 it was valued at £10,000. Now in today's market it's valued at nearly £650,000. Who's planning to live another 50 years? So if we buy a house today worth £100,000, in 50 years time, what will it be worth? £6.5 million. Now people say that can't be right, because that's what we say in our heads. That can't be right. But this is what happens. This is what happens in property. That means that £1 million house now will be worth 65 million in 50 years time. How many do you want? Now even if you're only going to live another 20 years, if we look at the house price data, so we start in 1964 and take it up to 1984. So in 20 years it's still going to be worth 20 times as much. They're worth £2 million each. This is why we buy property. Now what happens is it ebbs and flows. So here in 1964, Harold Wilson was in power for 6 years. Between that time, house prices increased 6% per annum. Edward Heath, 1970 to 1974, house prices were up 24% per annum. This is a rise in value of property of 124% over this period of time. Now people remember the beginning of the 1970s, they say, oh no, the start of the 70s, there was a massive crash. So people remember that. What they don't remember is that at the start of the 70s, there was a massive crash because they had to put interest rates up. And the reason they had to put interest rates up was to control inflation, because inflation had gone up 24% per annum. So there was a crash, but the crash was just a realignment of things because it just had massive growth. Harold Wilson 7% for a couple of years. James Callaghan 16% for 3 years. Margaret Thatcher 12% over 11 years. Then we had a major flat period of 1% from 90 to 97. While John Major was in power, 1% per annum growth. Tony Blair 12% per year. Then more recently, we had a pretty flat period again. London have been booming, but in general, we've had a relatively flat period. The reason I'm showing you this is because what generally happens, you have a 6 to 8 years of flat, then you have 8 to 10 years of growth. 6 to 10 years flat, 8 to 10 years growth. Now let's look at another couple of slides. House price data. Since 1957, property prices have risen on average by 11.3% per year.